History does not build monuments to the fair man. It digs him a quiet grave, unmarked and forgotten. And yet the names of tyrants are carved into the very stone of civilization. Have you ever dared to ask why? Why the path paved with noble intentions so often leads to ruin, while the road of calculated ambition leads to an empire? The answer is a truth so dangerous, most will refuse to hear it. We begin with the figure of the idealist, the man who treats the world as a courtroom and himself as a servant of its highest laws. He operates under the grand delusion that human affairs are governed by a cosmic scale of justice, and that his adherence to fairness will be rewarded with loyalty, respect, and success. He sees a world of contracts, of debts owed and paid, of moral ledgers that must, in the end, be balanced. In every negotiation, he seeks the middle ground. In every victory, he divides the spoils with perfect equity. In every conflict, he extends the hand of forgiveness, believing that his nobility will inspire the same in his adversaries. He believes that to be just is to be strong. This belief is a fatal pathology, for the world is not a courtroom, it is an arena. And in this arena, his virtues are systematically turned into weapons against him. His predictability, born from a rigid adherence to principle, makes him an open book to his rivals. They know he will always choose the fair path, and so they lay their traps along it. His desire for consensus paralyzes him, allowing more decisive men to seize the initiative while he is still deliberating on the ethics of action. His distribution of rewards meant to foster goodwill instead breeds entitlement. He gives equally to the lion and the lamb, and is surprised when the lion devours the lamb and then turns on him for more. His forgiveness is not seen as strength, but as an invitation to transgress again without consequence. He becomes a servant to the demands of others, a master of nothing, least of all his own destiny. He is not felled by a single dramatic blow from an enemy. He is slowly dismantled, piece by piece, by the very people he sought to treat with honor. He suffers a death by 1,000 concessions, a slow bleeding of power, wealth, and will, all sacrificed on the altar of an abstract idea of fairness. In the end, his epitaph is written by his enemies, and it reads, "Here lies a good man, a fool." This is the state of nature. To lament it is a waste of time. To ignore it is suicide. The great Florentine Niccolò Machiavelli understood this not as a moral failing of the world, but as its fundamental operating principle. His wisdom is not a call to evil, but a diagnosis of reality. He instructs the aspiring prince to put away the scales of the judge and take up the ledger of the banker. For power is not a moral abstraction. Power is capital. Every action, every decision, every alliance is either an investment or an expense. The question is never, is this fair? The question is, and must always be, what is the return on this investment? Here we unearth one of Machiavelli's most misunderstood and crucial lessons, the strategic danger of a reputation for generosity. The idealist believes that by being seen as liberal and open-handed, he will win the love of his people and the loyalty of his allies. Machiavelli reveals this to be a direct path to ruin. He distinguishes between the prince who wishes to be seen as liberal, generous, and fair, and the one who is content to be seen as parsimonious or miserly. The path of the liberal prince is a siren's song. To gain this reputation, you must be lavish. You must spend ostentatiously. You must grant every request. This is a bottomless pit. Your treasury, be it of gold, of political favors, or of time, will quickly be exhausted. And what happens when the capital is gone? To maintain the reputation that now defines you, you are forced to become what you sought to avoid. You must burden your subjects with extraordinary taxes. You must seize the property of others. You must become rapacious and cruel, all to fund the very generosity that was meant to make you beloved. In your attempt to be fair to a few, you become oppressive to the many. The few who received your gifts will feel no great obligation, for they see it as their due. But the many from whom you must now take will feel a deep and abiding hatred. You will have earned the contempt of those you squeezed and the ingratitude of those you showered. You will have traded your security for a fleeting and expensive illusion of love. This is not cynicism, it is arithmetic. The pursuit of fairness, when defined as liberal generosity, is a self-devouring machine. Now consider the path of the prince who is not afraid to be called a miser. From the outset, he makes no pretense of open-handedness. He husbands his resources. He taxes only what is necessary. He grants favors only when they serve a clear, strategic purpose that strengthens the state and thus his own position. He understands that every coin in his treasury is a soldier waiting to be hired, a wall waiting to be built, a bribe waiting to be paid. He does not spend his capital on the fleeting drug of public applause. In the short term, he is called stingy, severe, perhaps even unfair, but his frugality is the foundation of his power. Because his resources are intact, he can wage war without bleeding his people dry. He can undertake great enterprises that bring glory and security to the state. He can weather the storms of fortuna because he has not squandered his strength in the calm. In the end, this miserly prince will be seen as more truly generous than the liberal one who came before him. For what is greater generosity than providing stability, security, and victory? His subjects, unburdened by excessive taxes, are free to prosper. His soldiers, paid on time, are loyal and effective. His state, fiscally sound, is respected and feared. He has abandoned the performance of fairness in favor of the delivery of results. He has understood that true power does not lie in how much you give away, but in how much you retain for the decisive moment. The idealist's balance sheet is a testament to moral bankruptcy, a ledger filled with noble intentions and negative assets. The prince's ledger is the source of his longevity. He knows that a reputation for fairness is a luxury the powerful cannot afford. It is a debt that can never be fully paid. For the reputation of justice is a luxury that power cannot afford. It is a bottomless pit that consumes your resources and your will. Comment efficacy is the only virtue to master the accounting of power, and subscribe to learn how to build a treasury your rivals cannot plunder. You have learned to guard your capital, to view the world not through the lens of morality, but through the cold, clear glass of a banker's loupe. But a treasury, no matter how well guarded, is merely potential energy. It is a pile of stone, not a fortress. The true art of the prince lies in its investment, not in the fleeting applause of the crowd, but in the construction of an edifice of power so absolute that it becomes its own justification. This is the architecture of dependence. A master strategist knows that a man's affection is ephemeral. His gratitude is a currency that devalues the moment it is spent. His sense of justice is a fragile pretense, easily discarded when self-interest calls. These are the foundations of sand upon which the idealist builds his kingdom, and it is why his kingdom is always washed away by the first tide of adversity. Machiavelli implores the prince to build upon a foundation that is his own. What is more truly your own than the immutable self-interest of others? This is the bedrock of human nature, the one constant in a universe of variables. Therefore, the wise ruler does not seek to purchase loyalty with fairness. He seeks to engineer a system where loyalty is the only logical choice. He does not aim to be loved. He aims to be necessary. This is the first and most crucial blueprint in the architecture of control. You must not be a partner in a network of equals. You must become the central pillar upon which the entire structure rests. Your absence must not be a mere inconvenience. It must signify the immediate and catastrophic collapse for all who shelter beneath your roof. How is such an edifice constructed? The naive ruler distributes power, believing that by empowering his lieutenants, he creates stakeholders invested in his success. This is a catastrophic miscalculation. By giving them their own independent sources of strength, their own armies, their own wealth, their own popular support, he creates not allies, but future rivals. He has given them the very swords they will one day use to cut his throat. The architect of dependence does the opposite. He centralizes all critical resources. He ensures that he alone is the gatekeeper to wealth, to status, to information, and to security. He does not give his captains their own legions. He gives them command over legions loyal only to him. He does not grant his advisors permanent titles. He bestows temporary honors that can be withdrawn at his whim. He creates a solar system in which he is the sun. Other bodies may be large and luminous, but their light is merely a reflection of his own, and their orbits are dictated by his inescapable gravitational pull. They do not follow him because it is right. They follow him because to break away would be to fling themselves into the cold, empty darkness. This is a system built not on the shifting sands of human character, but on the granite of human need. The fair man wants allies who stand with him by choice. The prince forges allies who have no other choice. This is not tyranny, it is a profound understanding of political physics. The objective is to create a web of interlocking interests where your survival is synonymous with the survival of all. Your ambitions become their ambitions, not through persuasion, but because you have cleverly woven their destinies into the fabric of your own. When your enemies attack you, they are not merely attacking a man. They are attacking the entire ecosystem that depends on you, and that ecosystem will rise to defend itself with a ferocity that no hired mercenary or fair-weather friend could ever match. Once this structure is in place, it must be maintained. And here we uncover a second, more subtle Machiavellian truth, one that concerns the very currency of power, the bestowing of benefits. The idealist, bound by his courtroom mentality, sees reward as the settlement of a debt. A service is rendered, a payment is made. The transaction is complete, the ledger is balanced. In his quest for fairness, he has achieved perfect inefficiency. By settling the account, he has extinguished all obligation. The recipient is now a free agent, his gratitude already fading into memory. The master of statecraft understands that obligation is not something to be settled, but something to be cultivated. Machiavelli gives us the key. Benefits ought to be conferred little by little so that they may be better savored. This is not a suggestion for fiscal prudence, it is a manual for psychological enslavement. A large singular gift, a grand gesture of generosity, creates a momentary surge of gratitude that quickly recedes. It is a flash of lightning, illuminating everything for a second before plunging it back into darkness. But a slow, calculated drip of smaller benefits creates a state of perpetual anticipation. It is a slow-burning fire that provides constant warmth and light, and which everyone fears to see extinguished. This method transforms the dynamic of power. You are no longer the debtor paying for a service, you are the source from which all blessings flow. By bestowing favors slowly, intermittently, and often unexpectedly, you keep your subjects and your allies in a state of hopeful dependence. Their minds are constantly occupied with how to please you, how to earn that next small token of your favor. Gratitude for past deeds is a weak and fading memory, but hope for future benefits is a powerful, animating force. You are cultivating an addiction, and you are the sole supplier. The withdrawal of your favor becomes a more potent threat than any physical punishment. The man who has received one great gift may feel content. The man who receives a steady stream of small gifts fears, above all else, that the stream will run dry. This is the art of the poisoned gift. It appears as benevolence, as a sign of your favor and grace, but within it is the subtle poison of dependency. The fair man gives a promotion and a raise after a year of hard work, thereby settling the score. The strategist gives an unexpected compliment in a public forum, a small piece of valuable information in a private meeting, a minor responsibility that hints at a greater future. Each of these acts costs him little, but their psychological impact is immense. They do not close the book, they open a new chapter. They create an ongoing narrative of aspiration in the mind of the recipient, a story in which you are the author. They are not following you because you are just. They are following you because they are entranced by the future you alone can offer them. Through this careful alchemy, you transmute their ambition into your power, their hope into your leash. You have abandoned the clumsy scales of justice for the fine instruments of human desire, and with them you will build an empire that endures. You have laid the foundations of your fortress, not with the crumbling mortar of sentiment, but with the cold, hard granite of calculated dependency. You have mastered the economics of power, learning to dispense favor not as a payment, but as an intoxicating narcotic. Yet this entire external structure, this magnificent architecture of control, will inevitably collapse if the architect himself remains a prisoner to the old superstitions. The most formidable enemy you will ever face is not the rival at your gates, but the idealist who still resides within your own mind. Before you can command the world, you must achieve absolute sovereignty over yourself. This is the internal war, and its objective is the complete annihilation of the judge who presides in your soul. This internal judge is the ghost of fairness, the phantom of a symmetrical world that does not exist. It whispers to you the catechism of the herd: treat others as you would wish to be treated, an eye for an eye. Give what you hope to receive. This is the logic of reciprocity, the morality of the marketplace. It presumes a world of equal players operating in good faith. To the prince, this way of thinking is not merely naive, it is a cognitive poison. It shackles your actions to the anticipated reactions of others. It forces you to project your own sense of honor and reason onto men who possess neither. It is an act of unilateral disarmament in a world of perpetual conflict. The first and most difficult liberation is the abandonment of this symmetry. You must accept the fundamental asymmetry of nature. The wolf does not owe the sheep a reciprocal debate before it feeds. The storm does not consider the fairness of the sailor's plight before it sinks his ship. To apply a single symmetrical law to the wolf and the sheep is not justice. It is a profound and dangerous insanity. It is allowing the predator to dictate the terms of engagement to the prey. The true strategist must therefore undergo a profound mental re-engineering. He must cauterize the part of his mind that craves a balanced equation. His actions must be dictated not by a universal rule, but by a singular purpose, the preservation and expansion of his power. He does not ask, what would be a fair response? He asks, what response will produce the outcome I desire? This requires a chilling intellectual honesty. It requires you to see men not as you wish they were, but as they are, creatures of avarice, fear, and vanity, driven by an insatiable appetite for their own advantage. Once you have accepted this, the world becomes a different place. You are no longer a participant in a moral drama. You are a physician diagnosing a patient. And the diagnosis is terminal. This leads us to another of Machiavelli's brutal, illuminating truths, the critical distinction between the armed and the unarmed prophet. Throughout history, men have come forth with new ideas, new moral codes, new visions of a just and better world. They are prophets, all of them. But Machiavelli observes that all armed prophets have conquered and the unarmed ones have been destroyed. The man who clings to fairness is the quintessential unarmed prophet. He believes in the inherent power of his ideas. He is convinced that the righteousness of his cause is a weapon in itself, that truth and virtue will ultimately persuade the unconvinced and convert the hostile. He stands in the public square and preaches a gospel of equity and mutual respect to a crowd that, while applauding his fine words, is simultaneously calculating how his principles can be exploited for their own gain. His sermons are beautiful. His failure is guaranteed. He is unarmed because his entire philosophy rests on the willing cooperation of others. He has no mechanism for coercion. When men grow weary of his doctrines, and they always do, for virtue is arduous and vice is easy, they will simply walk away, or worse, they will crucify him for having shown them a standard they could not meet. His legacy is a footnote, his name a cautionary tale. The prince, by contrast, must be an armed prophet. He too has a vision of order, stability, and glory for his state. He too preaches a gospel, but his gospel is the gospel of self-interest, and his arguments are backed by the irrefutable logic of force. He understands that human convictions are not changed by eloquent appeals to a higher nature. They are realigned by demonstrations of power. Belief follows advantage. People will come to believe in the justice of any system that guarantees their security and offers them a path to prosperity. The prince does not ask for faith. He creates the conditions that make faith in his rule the only rational choice. He uses the rhetoric of justice, of religion, of the common good, as a shepherd uses a staff. Not because he believes the sheep understand the philosophy behind it, but because it is an effective tool for guiding the flock where he needs it to go. The armed prophet does not need the people to love his truth. He needs them to obey his will. Over time, that obedience, reinforced by the stability and order his rule provides, will calcify into a new form of truth. The laws he imposes will become the new definition of justice. The enemies he crushes will be remembered as villains. The order he forges from the chaos will be seen as the natural and righteous state of affairs. He does not win a debate, he ends it. While the unarmed prophet places his faith in the better angels of human nature, the armed prophet places his faith in the unassailable reality of his own strength. He knows that a principle without the power to enforce it is nothing more than a private opinion. His truth is not a proposition to be considered, it is a reality to be inhabited. He has abandoned the fantasy of persuading minds and has embraced the far more effective task of conditioning behavior. For in the cold calculus of history, it is not the most eloquent gospel that survives, but the one preached from the shadow of a drawn sword. You have silenced the internal judge that pleads for a symmetry the world will not grant. You have learned to navigate not by the flickering candle of public opinion, but by the cold, constant star of your own advantage. You have become the armed prophet. Now, before we raise your empire upon the ruins of obsolete moralities, ensure you are subscribed, for the final lesson is reserved not for those who seek to understand the rules of the world, but for those who dare to become the law itself. The time for analysis is over. The time for creation has begun. This is the masterstroke, the imposition of a new and unassailable reality. The decisive act of the supreme strategist is rarely the bloody coup or the dramatic battlefield victory that history books so love to glorify. Those are the clumsy methods of the brute. The true masterstroke is a quiet and fundamental re-engineering of the very landscape of power. It is not an act of destruction, but an act of irresistible creation. Imagine a fertile plain watered by a chaotic delta of 100 small streams, each controlled by a different petty lord. They squabble, they divert water, they create unpredictable floods and droughts. This is the world of fair competition, a state of perpetual low-grade chaos. The idealist would try to negotiate a treaty among these lords, a pact of fairness doomed to fail. The brute would try to conquer them one by one, an exhausting and endless war. The prince, the armed prophet, does neither. While they are all distracted by their squabbles, he undertakes a great work. He mobilizes his resources, his capital, his will, and he carves a single deep, undeniable channel from the river's source, directing the vast majority of the water through a path of his own design. He does not attack the old streams, he simply makes them irrelevant. Then, when Fortuna provides the inevitable season of drought, the petty lords find their streams have run dry. The entire plain, once a patchwork of competing interests, now looks to a single source for its life. This is the monopoly of necessity. He did not ask for their allegiance. He did not debate the justice of his actions. He simply created a new reality in which their survival became entirely dependent on his will. His aqueduct is not merely a source of water, it is the new organizing principle of the entire society. This is the execution of the master plan. It is a moment of supreme virtue, where skill, audacity, and vision seize an opportunity to render the old world obsolete. It might be the creation of a new trade route, the mastery of a new technology, the establishment of a new financial system. It is a move that does not merely defeat the other players in the game, it throws the old game board into the fire and replaces it with one of his own invention, where he is the only player who fluently knows the rules because he authored them. This act of injustice, this unilateral seizure of the means of survival, is so profound and so total that it transcends accusation. To accuse him of unfairness would be as absurd as accusing gravity of being unfair. He has made his power a fact of nature. But the stroke itself, however brilliant, is only a moment. The true genius of the prince is demonstrated in the consolidation that follows. The creation of a new order is not complete until it is accepted not just as necessary but as natural. The prince does not rest. He immediately begins the work of legitimizing the new reality. He establishes new institutions, new laws, new courts, new traditions, that all operate according to the logic of the system he has built. The water from his great channel is distributed through a new, orderly system of irrigation, bringing unprecedented prosperity and stability. He does not apologize for the old streams running dry. He frames their chaotic flow as the age of strife, from which he has delivered the people. His unjust act is recast as the founding moment of a golden age. He rewrites the official history. The old petty lords who now must come to him for their very existence are not remembered as his rivals, but as relics of a backward past. His new laws are not presented as instruments of his control, but as the embodiment of true justice and wisdom. He does not erase the past. He recontextualizes it, turning it into a cautionary tale whose only moral is the necessity of his own rule. The population, experiencing a level of order and security they have never known, will not mourn the loss of their former chaotic freedoms. Man fears nothing more than uncertainty. The prince has replaced the anxiety of 1,000 unpredictable variables with the certainty of a single absolute authority. In return for their obedience, he gives them peace. It is a transaction that the vast majority of humanity will accept without hesitation. His power is now rooted not in fear of his armies, but in the populace's fear of the chaos that would return should he ever fall. He has not just conquered his enemies, he has conquered the very idea of an alternative to his reign. Here we arrive at the final philosophical truth. The idealist, the fair man, spends his life searching for justice as if it were a lost continent, a pre-existing truth waiting to be discovered. He looks to the heavens, to ancient books, to the wisdom of philosophers, hoping to find a map that will tell him what is right. The prince knows that there is no map. There is only a wilderness. Justice is not a thing to be discovered. It is a thing to be built. It is the name that the victors give to the arrangements they have made. The wolf that brings down the stag is not immoral. It is merely expressing its nature and asserting its dominance. The prince who forges a state from the fires of human ambition and fear is not good or evil. He is a force of nature imposing order on chaos. The ultimate power is not merely to win the game of life. It is the power to be the creator of the game, to define the very concepts of winning and losing, of virtue and vice, of justice and crime. The idealist reads reality. The prince writes it. The ultimate throne is not a seat of judgment. It is the architect's table upon which a new world is willed into existence.